Imagine standing at the gates of the underworld. The air is thick with darkness, and suddenly you hear it, a low, bone-chilling growl echoing from three massive heads. This is Cerberus, the most terrifying guard dog in all of Greek mythology. And today, you're going to discover why even the bravest heroes feared this monster. Welcome back to Olympian Echo. In Greek mythology, the underworld wasn't just a place you visited. It was a prison you could never escape from. And guarding those gates was a creature so horrifying that its very name meant Death Demon of the Dark. Let me tell you the story of Cerberus. So, what exactly was Cerberus? A gigantic hound, with not one, not two, but three massive heads, each one capable of ripping you apart. But that wasn't all. His tail? A living, venomous serpent. His mane? Dozens of snakes writhing and hissing around his neck. And his claws? The razor-sharp claws of a lion. Some ancient writers claimed Cerberus actually had 50 heads, though most historians believe this count included all those serpents in his mane. Either way, this was no ordinary dog. Cerberus had one job, and he was terrifyingly good at it. He stood guard at the entrance to Hades, the Greek underworld, making sure that once you died and crossed into that realm, you could never, ever come back. When the dead entered, he would let them pass, but if anyone tried to leave, Cerberus would devour them without mercy. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. There was one hero brave, or crazy, enough to face Cerberus, Hercules, also known as Hercules. As his 12th and final labor, Hercules was given what seemed like an impossible task: go down to the underworld and bring Cerberus back to the land of the living. Think about that for a moment. Not only did Hercules have to enter the realm of the dead while still alive, but he had to capture the most ferocious monster guarding its gates and drag it back to the surface. So how did Hercules manage to capture the most feared creature in the underworld? Here's where the story gets absolutely insane. When Hercules descended into the realm of the dead, he did something no ordinary hero would dare. He asked Hades himself for permission to take Cerberus, and surprisingly, Hades agreed. But with one brutal condition: Hercules could take Cerberus, but, and this is a massive but, he couldn't use any of his weapons. No sword, no bow and arrows, no club, nothing. He would have to overpower the three-headed monster with his bare hands. Picture this epic showdown. Hercules stood at the gates of Acheron, the river of woe, face to face with Cerberus. The beast's three heads snarled, its serpent mane hissing, ready to tear him apart. But Hercules had a plan. He wore his famous lion skin armor, the hide of the Nemean lion he'd killed in his first labor. Then, without hesitation, he lunged forward and wrapped his massive arms around all three of Cerberus's heads in a devastating chokehold. The battle was chaos. Cerberus thrashed violently. His serpent tail struck again and again, biting into Hercules' flesh. The snake, heads in his mane, snapped at him from every angle. But Hercules held on, his muscles straining, refusing to let go. Minute after agonizing minute passed. Finally, Cerberus began to weaken. The mighty hound of Hades couldn't break free from Hercules' iron grip. For the first time in its existence, Cerberus was defeated. Hercules dragged the conquered beast up from the underworld, passing through the ancient city of Trozen. Imagine the terror of the people there, women clutching their children, watching in absolute horror as this legendary hero emerged from the depths with a three-headed monster in tow. He brought Cerberus before King Eurystheus, proving he'd completed the impossible 12th labor. Some stories say Eurystheus was so terrified when he saw Cerberus that he hid in a giant jar. But here's something remarkable about Hercules. True to his word, after showing Cerberus to the king, he took the creature back to the underworld and returned it to Hades. The Guardian was restored to his post, and the balance between life and death was maintained. But wait. There's more to this story that most people don't know. Before Hercules could even attempt to enter the underworld, he needed to prepare himself mentally and spiritually for what he was about to face. Heracles traveled to the sacred city of Eleusis and underwent initiation into the mysterious Eleusinian mysteries, ancient secret rituals that taught initiates about life, death, and the afterlife. What exactly happened during these rituals? And nobody knows for sure because initiates were sworn to secrecy on penalty of death. But whatever Heracles learned there gave him the knowledge and courage he needed to face the realm of the dead. When Heracles finally descended into the underworld through a cave at Cape Tenarum, he wasn't completely alone. The god Hermes himself appeared to guide him through the twisted passages of the underworld. Some stories even say the goddess Athena accompanied them, watching over Zeus's favorite son. Can you imagine walking through absolute darkness, guided by a god, knowing that every step takes you deeper into a place where no living person belongs? As Heracles journeyed through the underworld, he encountered two familiar faces, his friends Theseus and Pirithous, trapped in chairs of forgetfulness. These two heroes had foolishly tried to kidnap Persephone, the queen of the underworld, and Hades had punished them by making them sit in magical chairs that made them forget who they were. Heracles grabbed Theseus and pulled with all his godlike strength. The chair released him, but some say a chunk of Theseus's thigh was left stuck to the seat. And that's why, according to legend, Athenians were known for having particularly lean thighs. When Heracles tried to free Pirithous, the very earth shook in protest. The gods would not allow the rescue of someone who had dared to covet Persephone. Heracles had to leave him behind, trapped forever in that cursed chair. After capturing Cerberus and dragging him in adamantine chains, chains made from mythical, indestructible diamonds, Heracles brought the creature back to the surface world, and here's where the story gets wild. When Cerberus emerged into daylight for the first time in his existence, the brilliant sun overwhelmed him. The three-headed hound began vomiting violently. Everywhere his toxic bile splattered onto the ground, a deadly new plant sprouted, aconite, also known as wolfsbane. Yes, according to Greek mythology, one of the world's most poisonous plants was literally created from the vomit of the guard dog of hell. And Heracles paraded Cerberus across Greece, and people came from everywhere to witness this impossible sight. Mothers held their children back in terror, entire villages evacuated as the hero passed through with his monstrous prisoner. When Heracles finally arrived at the gates of Tiryns to present Cerberus to King Eurystheus, the king took one look at those three snarling heads and jumped into a giant storage jar, trembling with fear. From inside the jar, his voice shaking, he begged Heracles to take the monster away. But Heracles had one question first. Am I finally free? After 12 impossible labors, after facing monsters and gods and death itself, Heracles demanded his freedom. And Eurystheus, cowering in his jar, had no choice but to agree. The hero's punishment was complete. True to his word, Heracles returned Cerberus to the underworld, where the faithful hound resumed his eternal duty, guarding the boundary between life and death. But the story of Cerberus doesn't end with Heracles. Throughout Greek and Roman mythology, this three-headed monster encountered many other brave or foolish souls who dared to enter the underworld. Perhaps the most beautiful encounter with Cerberus came from Orpheus, the legendary musician whose songs could move mountains to tears. When his beloved wife Eurydice died, Orpheus did the unthinkable. He journeyed to the underworld while still alive, armed only with his lyre. As Orpheus approached the gates of Hades, Cerberus rose up with all three heads, ready to tear this intruder apart. His serpent mane hissed threateningly, his massive jaws opened wide. But then, Orpheus began to play. The music was so heartbreakingly beautiful that Cerberus, the most feared beast in all the underworld, simply stopped. His three heads lowered, his eyes, which had never known peace, slowly closed. For the first time in his eternal existence, Cerberus fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Even the snakes in his mane ceased their hissing and lay still. The very house of death itself was spellbound by Orpheus's song, and the monster who showed no mercy to anyone allowed the musician to pass unharmed. Centuries later, a mortal woman named Psyche also had to face Cerberus. The goddess Venus, jealous of Psyche's beauty, commanded her to descend into the underworld and bring back a box of beauty cream from Persephone herself. But Psyche was given a secret. She carried 2 barley cakes soaked in honey. As she approached the gates, Cerberus detected her presence immediately. All 3 heads turned toward her, growling menacingly. Drool dripped from his fangs. The serpent tail coiled, ready to strike. Without hesitation, Psyche tossed 1 cake toward the beast. Cerberus, despite being a terrifying monster, was still a dog at heart. All 3 heads lunged for the treat simultaneously, fighting each other for the honey-soaked cake. While the 3 heads were distracted, bickering amongst themselves, Psyche simply walked past into the underworld. On her return journey, she used her 2nd cake the same way, and Cerberus let her pass again. Proof that even the most fearsome guardian could be outsmarted with the right bait. To this very day, in the realm of myth and legend, Cerberus still stands at his post. The earth occasionally trembles when he shifts his massive weight. His triple bark echoes through the darkness. The chains of adamant that once bound him during his capture now hang loose. A reminder that even he was once conquered, but chose to return to his duty. Ancient Greeks believed that when pestilence and death swept through their cities, it meant Cerberus had broken free from his chains and was wandering the mortal world. Temples would perform rituals to send him back, to restore the natural order between life and death. Because that's what Cerberus truly represents, the absolute boundary between the living and the dead. A line that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. He doesn't guard that gate out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Without Cerberus, chaos would reign, the dead would wander among the living, and the natural order of the universe would collapse. So the next time you hear a dog bark in the darkness, remember the legend of Cerberus, the 3-headed hound who, despite being conquered by the greatest hero who ever lived, returned to his post and continues his eternal watch. Because some duties are more important than freedom, and some monsters are actually heroes in disguise. That's the complete saga of Cerberus, guardian of the underworld. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Greek mythology, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment telling me which mythological creature should I cover next.
The Hydra, the Chimera, Medusa, let me know. Until next time, keep exploring the myths that shaped our world.